Imagine if the iron grip of a police state could shatter overnight, not by invasion or economic ruin, but by the very guardians fleeing their posts in terror. Could Russia's centuries-old regime of control really be crumbling from within, as top officials defect to the West with damning secrets? This isn't just speculation, it's a shocking reality unfolding in 2025 that exposes the unraveling core of Vladimir Putin's power. In the twilight of 2025, Russia's deeply rooted police state no longer stands unshaken. What was once a towering, inexorable force sustaining authority for 2 decades has begun to fracture under its own weight. How terrifying is it that the lifeblood of this regime, the relentless, all-powerful security machine, is turning against itself, sparking an unprecedented exodus that leaves the nation vulnerable and adrift. Building on that glimpse of disintegration, Moscow's elite corridors buzz with an anxiety so thick you can taste the metallic tang of fear in the air. Visuals of prosecutors and intelligence operatives, once the feared enforcers of Putin's will, now vanish into exile, their hurried footsteps echoing through silent offices as they abandon loyalty. They clutch not just belongings, but clandestine dossiers that whisper threats of international tribunals, transforming allies into accusers before the International Criminal Court. The acrid smoke of betrayal lingers, signaling not merely defection, but a mutiny that erodes the state's foundations, rendering borders fragile and streets exposed. But what desperate revelations drive these key players to leap from the sinking vessel, risking everything to expose the horrors they've upheld? Echoing the wave of panic spreading through Russia's capital, the true peril emerges from those who've intimately orchestrated the regime's darkest deeds. Olga Romanova, a steadfast voice from the foundation dedicated to Russia's subdued struggles, unveils chilling details that amplify the crisis. These aren't random foot soldiers deserting ranks, they're elite investigators from the Central Investigative Committee, mirroring Ukraine's formidable state bureau, pouring their forbidden knowledge into Western hands and scholarly tomes on atrocities. The chilling draft of a dissertation in the United Kingdom's damp libraries hints at undisclosed barbarities, where one insider, once immersed in classified atrocities, now dissects the secrets under academic scrutiny. Yet why does this betrayal intensify now, as profitability from conflict lures talents elsewhere, mocking loyalists' meager wages? As alarms blare in Moscow's heart, the fiscal wounds of war deepen, with officers' monthly compensation averaging a paltry 38,000 rubles, or roughly $380, barely surpassing a grocer's pay. The allure of army incentives, boasting bonuses soaring to 200,000 rubles and multiples in earnings, creates a bitter contrast, as defense workers bask in prosperity while comrades endure hardship. This disparity fuels a profound void, with Interior Minister Vladimir Kolokoltsev acknowledging a staggering 172,000 personnel gaps, leaving over a third of positions open nationwide. Rural outposts, particularly beyond the Urals and in the Caucasus, have dwindled by half, some areas facing 90% vacancies where isolated hamlets stand unprotected. If salaries erode resolve, what nightmares fester when authority evaporates, turning civic arenas into arenas of unchecked turmoil? Stemming from this crippling shortfall, the absence breeds profound upheaval, as veterans flow home scarred, clutching not symbols of honor but remnants of frontline brutality. Reports highlight around 500,000 returnees, their psyches fractured by unseen horrors, straining for reintegration amid scarce support, sparking surges in interpersonal strife within southern and eastern hubs. Simultaneously, a wave of self-protection sweeps through homes, with over 20 million unregistered firearms circulating, more potent than ever, among worried residents. Migrants and regional groups fortify defenses against surging anxieties, while radical factions step in to enforce order, blurring lines between state control and private retribution. But as diplomacy falters, with stalwarts like Lavrov sidelined from global stages by cancelled summits, could inner isolation ignite an even fiercer storm? Amid escalating tensions, the isolation within surges, breeding an environment ripe for shadows of dissent. Trump's rebuff, swayed by stern counsel, sidelines Lavrov from key alliances like the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and ASEAN summits, severing ties to external wisdom. Putin, encircled by echoes of assent rather than reasoned counsel, navigates a perilous board. his isolation mirroring a monarch bereft of his strategist. Through this crescendo of paranoia and exodus, Russia teeters not toward a nostalgic downturn, but an abyss of fractured hegemony, where collective abandonment heralds unprecedented upheaval, forcing the regime to confront its fragile underbelly in the harsh light of reality. Imagine this shocking truth. In the heart of what was once an iron grip, Russia's mighty police system has crumbled under the weight of betrayal. High-ranking officers, prosecutors, and spies, the very enforcers of Vladimir Putin's regime, are deserting en masse, fleeing to the West with secrets that could dismantle the Kremlin. They're not just running, they're turning into star witnesses against their own leader in international courts. For over a century, Russia has been a fortress of surveillance and control. But now, as we approach late 2025, that fortress is shattering from within. Panic grips Moscow, not from battlefield losses or economic woes, but from the exodus of those who upheld the regime. These defectors carry not just bags, but dossiers filled with evidence potent enough to land Putin and his circle in The Hague for war crimes. A profound internal decay unfolds, police stations empty, borders gaping, streets abandoned to chaos. It's like sailors fleeing a sinking vessel, stealing lifeboats loaded with the ship's dark truths. As authority wanes, violence surges unchecked among veterans and citizens alike. Society fractures, armed and paranoid, pushing the nation toward an abyss darker than the 1990s. How did this guardian of order break? What twists await as paranoia consumes the Kremlin itself? Continuing from the unfolding exodus where defectors expose the regime's fragility. Olga Romanova, head of the Sitting Russia Foundation, reveals the gravity through her trusted insights. These escapees aren't street cops. They're elite investigators from the Central Office of the Investigative Committee, Russia's version of Ukraine's top probe agency. Her words echo like a cracking whip. More than a third of police spots in Russia sit vacant, a void that stings the air with neglect. In regions east of the Urals and the North Caucasus, forces have halved in 5 years. Remote areas sting worse, up to 90% unmanned, leaving villages silent under unpatrolled skies, the scent of abandonment thick like fog. Romanova cites a personal acquaintance, a high-up defector now in the West, likely Britain, penning a thesis on Russia's human rights atrocities. Picture this betrayal, a man who delved into the state's deepest crimes now leaking those shadows to Western spy nets and scholars. The sensory chill of exposed secrets prickles the skin. But even sharper is the plight of 4 prison chiefs from the Federal Penitentiary Service, currently unraveling horrors at the International Criminal Court. These insiders didn't just observe, they orchestrated the regime's cruelties against captured Ukrainians. Their accounts pierce deeper than global reports, for they were not bystanders but the core mechanism. Now, they describe a machine oiled by blood, the metallic tang of enforced silence breaking into cries for justice. Why this sudden turmoil? Twist into the war's hidden toll, economic misery gnawing at the soul. Building on that revelation of defectors spilling the Kremlin's bloody secrets. Romanova details their escapes, painting a picture of cogs loosening in a blood-lubricated machine. Why erupt now? Look to the war's fiscal and mental scars. Russian officers earn barely 38,000 rubles, around $380 monthly. Feel the sting, lower than a Moscow grocery clerk's wage. Meanwhile, Putin dangles 200,000 ruble bonuses for enlistees, luring them to lines that echo with gunfire and screams. An officer smells the envy as a desk maid house for the front, pocketing 5 times the pay, workers in defense factories basking in plush comforts. Rhetorical slap, is loyalty worth poverty when comrades thrive on war spoils? Result, a catastrophic brain drain. Even Interior Minister Vladimir Kolokoltsev, note the thumbnail humor, admitted defeat. Ukrainian source Kyiv Post blows the whistle, 172,000 vacancies gaping in the ministry. Kolokoltsev, your boast of strength now mocked by emptiness, as forces dwindle and vacancies yawn. In villages, no policing means darkness falls unchecked, assault, theft, betrayal simmering without response. St. Petersburg expert Ekaterina Kojava warns of total depletion, from domestic quarrels to street tempests, communities stretch a lone officer thin, substituting state order with, what? chaos winds tighter, heating Kremlin's walls. Which ancient paranoia ignites next? As isolation deepens, diplomats sidelined, Trump's snub to Lavrov like a dagger, Putin hears only sycophants. Twist, will this armed chaos ignite civil strife, or a revolution echoing forgotten freedoms? The streets hum with unrest, veterans' boots thudding heavy, weapons glinting in civilian hands, millions arming against rising tides. Migrants and nationalists clash in armed self-defense. Radicals forming militias to fill the justice vacuum. A homeowner fires on eviction crews, bullets ricocheting defiance. Analysts whisper, if this resistance ignites non-Russian realms, Galama Kremlin orders evaporate into dust. Dire warning, not a 1990s relapse, but a vortex of armed anarchy. Putin quarantined, echo chamber drowning reason. Law enforcement plays whack-a-mole as fires rage unchecked, personnel extinguished. Yet, amid despair, glimmers a shocking shift. What if this decay births unexpected alliances or a moral uprising against tyranny? As seconds tick past midnight in Moscow's unsettled night, shadows lengthen. Who emerges from the rubble? The internal chaos in Russia is spiraling out of control. After years of tight control, the police force is bleeding. More than a third of police positions are vacant across the country. In some areas east of the Ural Mountains and in the North Caucasus, staffing has halved over just 5 years. In remote districts, vacancies reach up to 90%. Villages in rural regions are left without a single law enforcement officer. In some cities, one patrol is trying to do what 7 officers used to handle. The streets are now eerily silent at times, with few officers available to respond to domestic violence, street fights, thefts, or fraud. The promise of order and stability? Virtually erased. The police are fleeing, not just because salaries are low, but out of fear. Many fear being forced to serve in brutal roles or being sent to the front lines to brutalize Ukrainians. The system is rotting from within. Officers see it clearly, and they're jumping ship before everything collapses. But what happens when the police vanish? Authority is no longer in control. A dangerous vacuum opens. Without guards, societal chaos erupts. Armed groups, militias, and criminal factions seize power. Street violence intensifies. This is not just disorder, it's an imminent collapse. Society teeters on the edge. Imagine walking the streets, you'd hear the distant echo of sirens, see shadows moving in the dark. The air is thick with uncertainty, and every corner hides danger. As the war drags into its 4th year, a terrifying transformation unfolds. Ordinary life crumbles, a new reality emerges, one where chaos rules. The question is, how long can this societal void be sustained before it spirals further into complete chaos? The answer might surprise or terrify you, but one thing is clear, Russia is sliding toward a breaking point. The entire fabric of the state is unraveling, one missing officer at a time. Following the collapse of authority, chaos has become the new ruler of Russia. The void left by the weakened state has been filled with violence and disorder. Streets filled with unpredictable turbulence, sounds of shouts, sirens, and distant gunfire echo through once peaceful neighborhoods. The war's 4th year has transformed society into a battleground. The government no longer maintains a monopoly on violence. Now, whoever has the strongest weapons controls the streets. Recently, a shocking incident in Transbaikal exemplifies this explosive shift. Police arrived at a house to perform an eviction. Instead of compliance, the homeowner opened fire. Officers were wounded in a barrage of gunfire. This kind of resistance, unthinkable a decade ago, is becoming alarmingly common across Russia. Authorities warn that if such defiance spreads further, the Kremlin's grip could fracture entirely. What does this mean for the future of state control when citizens are willing to engage in deadly firefights over property? The underlying reason for this chaos is rooted deep inside Russia's society. As the war drags into its 4th year, returning soldiers carry scars far beyond physical wounds. Ukrainian media estimates that about 500,000 veterans are returning home. But they do not come back with medals. Many are broken, traumatized, and armed with the weapons they took from the battlefield. These men are accustomed to violence. In a landscape devoid of psychological support or meaningful work, many find violence as their only refuge. This reality fuels a surge of crimes, murders, assaults, and robberies involving former soldiers surge in southern and eastern urban areas. Meanwhile, the Russian people are arming themselves at an unprecedented rate. Reports from the Jamestown Foundation reveal over 20 million weapons are now privately held within the country. Many of these firearms are military-grade equipment, more lethal and more dangerous than ever before. An arms race has erupted, igniting in critical regions. Migrants from Central Asia and local communities in autonomous republics are stockpiling guns to defend themselves amid rising nationalistic sentiments and police brutality. Moscow's aggressive stance toward migrants, including sending many to the front lines, has pushed these groups into a state of self-defense. Nationalist groups have also taken matters into their own hands. Paramilitary militias are forming. They act as vigilantes where the police are overwhelmed. With personnel shortages and an inability to maintain order, the authorities are forced to cooperate with these armed factions. The Kremlin's monopoly on violence is dissolving before our eyes. When official law enforcement falters, the streets are increasingly controlled by unofficial armies, ready to impose their own versions of justice. The scene in Russia now resembles a powder keg waiting to ignite. An entire society, once unified under a strong central authority, is slipping into chaos. The question remains, when the government's last lines of defense crumble, who will hold the line? The streets are heating up, each day bringing new conflicts, new weapons, and more uncertainty. The breakdown is not just a matter of law enforcement, it is a sign that Russia's entire future hangs in the balance. The core of authority in Russia has shattered. The once unbreakable grip of the police state is crumbling faster than anyone expected. The streets that once echoed with the uniformed patrols now tremble with chaos. Law enforcement no longer holds the reins. Instead, those with the loudest guns and the deadliest weapons are claiming control. Recently, a single incident proved how dangerous the situation has become. In a quiet neighborhood, authorities arrived to evict a homeowner. But instead of surrendering, the resident opened fire. Officers were wounded. The room filled with the crack of gunfire, the stench of smoke lingering in the air. This shocking scene isn't rare anymore. It's a new normal. 10 years ago, such defiance seemed impossible. Now, it's unfolding daily across Russia's vast terrain. Analysts warn that if resistance spills into non-Russian regions, chaos will explode beyond control. The Kremlin's police force is no longer the ultimate power. What awaits is a landscape of armed factions, vigilant groups, and an unraveling order. The police's game of whack-a-mole, fighting fires one after another, is lost. They lack the personnel. They lack the authority. The streets burn while the government's grip slips further. Behind this chaos lies more than just lawlessness. It reveals Vladimir Putin's deepening paranoia and ultimate isolation. His trusted diplomatic voice, Sergei Lavrov, has been silenced. For the first time since 2022, Lavrov isn't attending international meetings. Once the face of Russia's diplomacy, he's now sidelined. Why? Because of a simple yet critical reason: international distrust. The recent blow? A summit with the United States cancelled at the last moment. U.S. President Donald Trump refused to meet Lavrov. Allegedly, Marco Rubio advised that decision, citing discomfort with Lavrov's tough language. This act? It's a sign of Russia's diplomatic isolation. The bubble Putin has crafted around himself is shrinking. The empire he built on strength and control? It's cracking from within. Every day, new cracks appear. The streets echo with gunfire. Officials defect, revealing dark secrets. The global stage turns hostile. Russia's internal structure is collapsing, piece by piece. The question is, what is next? Will the nation descend into chaos? Or will Putin's regime survive this storm, battered but unbroken? The answers remain hidden behind a fog of uncertainty. Recent developments reveal Russia's diplomatic isolation has deepened dramatically. The removal of Sergei Lavrov from key international forums signals the severing of Moscow's last outward ties. Once a seasoned diplomat, Lavrov now finds himself sidelined, cut off from nearly all negotiations. This exclusion isn't just about protocol. It's driven by fear. The once strong voice of diplomacy has been silenced, replaced by silence that screams of paranoia. Inside Russia, the climate of suspicion is toxic. The security agency, designed to protect the state, now turns inward. Instead of confronting real enemies like terrorists or criminal gangs, it targets its own scientific minds. New decrees prohibit Russian scientists from collaborating with foreigners without express approval from the security services. Bright minds like Anatoly Maslov and Alexander Shiplyak, working on revolutionary hypersonic missile technology, are being detained, accused of treason. Physicist Yaroslav Kudryavtsev points out that this is sabotage, an act of self-destruction by those supposed to safeguard knowledge. He warns that Putin's actions are undermining the very system that could secure Russia's future, a process he calls strategic suicide. So, why does Putin keep pushing forward? Why not pause, reflect, or negotiate? Because, as one in-depth analysis suggests, the regime relies on constant conflict for survival. To admit failure would be to admit collapse. The military's staggering losses make surrender unthinkable. Putin's belief is that the next move will miraculously turn the tide, despite knowing most chips are gone. Elites surrounding him share this fear. They see the ship sinking but hesitate to make the first move. The FSB's shadowy grip keeps everyone paralyzed. Anyone who tries to escape, to board the lifeboat, risks destruction by those who hold the chain of power. This creates a terrifying standoff. The entire nation is trapped in a cycle of paranoia and denial, with no safe exit in sight. The question remains, how long can this madness continue before everything finally collapses? Imagine the Kremlin's inner circle, locked in a high-stakes gamble. They bet everything on the big jackpot. Yet, deep down, they sense the casino's rigged. The chips vanish. Putin's elite circles spiral into dread. All spot the ship sinking into stormy seas. Yet, fear freezes their steps. None dare grab the first lifeboat. For they whisper, the FSB will crush any who leap first. Fear masquerades as loyalty. Truly, terror silences the hall. But does loyalty forged in fear endure? History screams no. One shock can evaporate it all. What haunts Putin deepest? Not NATO's rumble. His true terror? Furious soldiers flooding home with arms. Unpaid cops simmering. Starving masses on hunger's edge. Echoes of 1917's chaos. Thus, the Interior Ministry's 30% vacancy rips a deadly wound in the regime's armor. Defenseless against its own kin. This fate looms inevitable. Data never deceives. As Russia chases Ukrainian victories, homes' locks crumble. The police? A nation's immune shield. Russia's shield fractures now. Security forces bolting to The Hague? Spilling truths at the ICC. Legitimacy shatters. Putin aches to freeze Ukraine's spirit. Instead, ignites his own realm in fiery strife. Streets hum with armed whispers. Tensions crackle like static. The state's shield drips away each dawn. This war. No longer Ukraine versus Russia. Now, Russia's future claws at its shadowed past. Kremlin struggles. Control slips through panicked fingers. Yet, the unraveling weaves deeper. Putin's machine inflicts ruin beyond empty precincts. Now, a silent, lethal wound festers. Infrastructure's silent war. For ages, Putin vowed to choke Europe's gas flow. Freeze their dreams out. Mocked their chills in sly films. But irony's blade twists. Fate's chill shifts inward. Moscow's suburbs tremble under biting frost. Russia's vast heating web, the communal system, falters dangerously. Not foreign foes, but neglected veins fracture the core. Pipes groan under winter's wrath. Icy drafts invade homes, clammy and unrelenting. Smells of rust and neglect seep through cracks. Touch weathered walls, feel the despair sting. Rhetorical question twists the knife: can a regime built on bluster warm its own hearths when the furnace dies? This failure's sting reaches Putin's veterans. Shivering in unheated barracks? War's echoes grow colder without refuge. The exodus of the faithful proves the regime's vulnerability. Shockingly, economic despair trumps loyalty. Low wages fuel the desertion tide. Veteran fury melds with unpaid grievances. An explosive union brews underground. As streets arm furtively, the stage sets for upheaval. Imagine the sensory assault, gunfire's sharp retort echoing alleys. Smoke reeks of mistrust. Cobbled streets bruise under heavy boots. The vacuum fills not with peace, but primal struggle. Law's monopoly voids. Who holds power now? Those with the fiercest grip on steel. This twist reveals the emperor's cloak in tatters. Not a strong man surveying realms, but a man encircled by crumbling illusions. As allies flee to judgment scales, the true terror emerges. Russia's own fire consumes it first. What if the freezing wave targets the throne? Cliff's edge teeters. Will the ship capsize before dawn's break? For the unraveling threads lead to a perilous leap, the gates of power creaking open, guests unwelcome advancing. In those infamous propaganda videos, they mocked Europe, claiming it would freeze through freezing winter temperatures. Yet, history's cruel twist is revealing itself now. It's no longer Europe that's shivering. Instead, Moscow's outskirts and entire regions are slowly succumbing to the cold. Russia's once mighty central heating system, the Kommunalny, built during the Soviet era, is faltering under the strain of time and neglect. Metal fatigue, damaged pipelines, and broken infrastructure mean that millions of Russian citizens are now confronting sub-zero temperatures in the comfort of their own homes. Imagine the chilling sound of pipes creaking, the icy breath of winter slipping through cracks, and the treacherous feeling of cold metal under fingertips. They trusted the system to keep them warm, trading some freedoms for stability and safety. But now, many are left with nothing: no heat, no gas, no security. From Podolsk to Vladivostok, hundreds of thousands are refugees in their own shattered homes. Their threat was always to freeze, and now, they are paying a heavy price for a regime that prioritizes weaponry over basic needs. This isn't mere management failure. It's a brutal indictment of a regime turned perverse. Why spend billions on missiles to devastate a distant village, yet refuse even a tiny sum to repair a broken water pipe in your neighborhood? The paradox is staggering. While Moscow spends lavishly on destruction abroad, its own people suffer from neglect and cold. But the crisis extends beyond frozen pipes and empty homes. It's a collapse of authority. When the police retreat and funding vanishes, chaos takes root. Power shifts into the hands of regional leaders and private militias, funded by local elites. The map of Russia still looks united, but on the ground, a different picture emerges. The void left by the police is rapidly filled by groups with their own rules, their own enforcement. The state's grip weakens daily, replaced by factions hungry to fill the vacuum of authority. The question is, how long can a state survive such fracturing? And what chaos will erupt when the unthinkable becomes inevitable? Imagine a Russia teetering on the edge of chaos, where the chaos is no longer just on the streets but deep inside its regions. The autonomous model established by Ramzan Kadyrov in Chechnya, a state within a state, is rapidly becoming the blueprint for others. Regions rich in resources, from Tatarstan to Yakutia, are sensing Moscow's grip loosening. As the Kremlin's power wanes, local elites begin to question, why obey a central authority that no longer supplies security or funds? Putin's grand plan to cleanse Ukraine has unhinged the entire country. In reality, it's pushing Russia toward self-destruction. If the money isn't flowing from the top, if safety is collapsing, what's left to hold the regions together? Whispers of defiance grow louder in secret chambers. The collapse of the Soviet Union was considered a disaster, but now, Putin seems intent on steering Russia down that same destructive path. His war machine, built on hypercentralization and endless resource drain, is like a runaway truck with faulty brakes. The country is losing on every front, battlefield victories fade, streets grow more lawless, homes turn cold, and regional authority crumbles. Meanwhile, Putin stares at maps, convinced he's expanding borders. But beneath his gaze, the ground is shifting, slipping away faster than he realizes. What if his empire is already slipping through his fingers? The question remains, is this the end of Russia as we know it? Or just the beginning of something darker? The story of a nation unraveling from within, a story with a shocking twist that no one saw coming. Are you ready to see the truth behind the facade?